In the preceding lessons, you've learned about some simple methods for obtaining information from corpora. There, we made the distinction between corpus-based methods and corpus-driven methods. As a quick reminder, corpus-based methods are used when you have a specific word or pattern in mind that you want to analyze in its typical context of use. This may be a technical word you don't fully understand, or an ideologically loaded one, which you feel conveys positive or negative evaluation. In corpus-based analysis, you have a clear question in mind, a bit like when you need to reach a destination and more or less know the way there. Corpus-driven methods, instead, are used to explore the corpus without a preset question in mind. You don't input a specific word, but let typical patterns of use emerge from the corpus on their own. This is a more exploratory approach, a bit like when you set off without a destination in mind, for the sake of observing your surroundings or mapping an unknown territory. The tools we introduced in the preceding lessons are rather straightforward, in the sense that the corpus-driven ones, namely word lists and n-gram lists, provide lists of frequent words and phrases, and the corpus-based ones, namely concordances and clusters, display words and phrases in their textual environment. All tools rely on the basic concept of frequency to prioritize linguistic information. Words, n-grams and clusters are displayed from the most to the least frequent, and concordances are sorted in a way that groups frequent patterns together. In other words, we used frequency as a means of prioritizing linguistic information from corpora. In this lesson, we use more sophisticated and hopefully more accurate methods based on statistical significance. You will understand what we mean by statistical significance in a moment. We introduce two more tools, a corpus-driven one, keywords, and a corpus-based one, collocations. But first of all, a definition. Keywords are words that occur relatively more often in a text or corpus being analyzed than they do in some reference corpus, where the difference in frequency is statistically significant. The screenshot on the slide shows a typical keyword output from &conc. But let's return to our definition and consider the words in it. If this sentence were your corpus, the word list would look like this. If we were to evaluate the aboutness of this corpus on the basis of its most frequent words, as provided by its word list, we would conclude that its most representative word is in, because it occurs 3 times. Yet, as we all know, in is a very frequent word in English in general, and its repeated occurrence in a text is to be expected and therefore hardly surprising or meaningful. Of course, this is a very extreme case because the corpus is tiny, it's just 1 sentence, but the principle remains valid for any amount of text. Some words, prepositions like of, articles like the, auxiliary verbs like be, common adverbs like never, general nouns like time, etc., will be more frequent than others no matter what, because of their role in the language rather than in the specific textual domain you're interested in. So we must find a way of sifting these out of the top of our word list. One way to do this is to use a reference corpus. We use the reference corpus as we would use a sieve. In falls our corpus, words which are equally frequent there and in the reference corpus are trapped in the sieve, while out from the bottom come words that are more frequent in our corpus than the reference corpus relative to corpus sizes. The result is a filtered list of words which are likely to be characteristic of the corpus. The filtering is done through statistical tests, which evaluate the significance of the difference between the expected and the observed frequencies. Now let's take a practical example of how this works. We're going to use Lawrence Anthony's &conc to obtain keywords from the English edition of Pellegrino Artusi's La scienza in cucina e l'arte di mangiar bene, in English, Science in the Kitchen and the Art of Eating Well. This is probably the most famous Italian cookbook, though it is in fact much more than this. It was written shortly after the unification of Italy in 1891 and contributed to creating a national identity by assembling recipes from different parts of the country and using a modern literary Italian to convey them, along with entertaining anecdotes and short stories. Later in the course, we have another activity for you based on this book, but for the time being, we simply explore it using the keyword method. So the question is, what are the most important words in Science in the Kitchen and the Art of Eating Well? Note down on a piece of paper the 5 words you expect to appear at the top of the keyword list. You may stop the video now before I show you the answer. Now, let's see if your intuition is correct. The top English words in terms of significance in this book are grams, ounces, recipe, butter, sauce, with, about, add, salt, and sugar. Some words refer to units of measure, like grams and ounces, others to ingredients. Butter is the most prominent ingredient, followed by salt and sugar. In terms of preparations, sauce is more prominent than, say, broth, position 27, or dough, position 30. Add is the only verb in this list. Can you guess what the next most prominent verb is? It's pour, position 19. Notice that this list also includes an adverb, about, and a preposition, with. These words are common in English in general, but the keyword tools tells us that they're especially common here compared to general English. Other common words like the and of are more frequent than about and with in this book, yet they're not key because their frequency is in line with their average frequency in English. Now, we turn to the second advanced method, collocation. We have already introduced collocations in our lesson on syntagmatic relations. Here is a definition of collocation that dates back to 1933, together with a typical collocation output, once again, from Ant Conk. A collocation is a succession of 2 or more words that must be learnt as an integral whole and not pieced together from its component parts. When we think of phrases that must be learnt as wholes, we often think of idioms, opaque expressions that we would at first not understand, like red herring, which of course is not a herring. Yet, there are also expressions that are perfectly intelligible but still restricted in their combination. Take the example of entertain an idea and entertain a view. Both expressions are possible and synonymous with hold an idea and hold a view. However, the combination of entertain and idea sounds more natural than that between entertain and view. If you wanted to use the word view, you would probably be better off combining it with hold than with entertain. These combination preferences can be checked in corpora. For instance, we can look up the nouns co-occurring with the verbs entertain and hold within a specific span to the left and to the right, or in this case, to the right only, where we're likely to find the collocating nouns we're interested in. Clearly, many nouns co-occur with hold and entertain, which means something completely different. Think hold hands and entertain children, and some sifting through is therefore required. Here on the slide, you can see the top 3 relevant collocates of hold and entertain from the UK WAC corpus. We limited the search to 2 words following the verbs. We considered all forms of the verbs and used log dice as a statistic for ordering the collocates. We're only reporting close synonyms here, but you will find more loosely related collocates in the extra materials accompanying this lesson. The UK WAC corpus is available from several online platforms. Look for it online if you would like to find more typical English phrases with hold and entertain. Wrapping up this lesson, we have introduced 2 advanced methods for analyzing corpora, which use statistics to prioritize certain words over others by comparing their overall frequency and their specific frequency. One method, the keyword method, is corpus-driven in the sense that you don't need to have an initial hypothesis. You simply explore the corpus and find out which words are typical of that corpus. The second method, the collocation method, is corpus-based. You start with a word and look left and right to find out its typical co-occurrences.